we need to talk about the chaos that has been going on with Harry and Meghan and their staff behind the scenes. Earlier this year, rumors emerged suggesting that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were assembling a formal royal-style inner circle of staff, complete with a chief of staff and approximately 11 to 12 salaried employees earning six-figure paychecks. That's a big payroll bill. Critics likened it to a hierarchy structure that they had previously criticized within the palace, that they were setting up a royal household, was the headline. In reality, their staff has never resembled a traditional royal household, neither in scale nor salary structure. There was never a full-on court with dozens of staff, but rather a modest-sized communications operation centered around Meredith Maines as their chief communications officer, at least now, or recently. Previously, though, they had a big scattered group of staff that felt very vague in their purpose and in their role, and it was chaos. But even still, any amount of staff really feels excessive. What does Harry really do these days anyway? Invictus has all its own staff that are perfectly capable of briefing Harry, and all he'd really need is maybe an assistant to coordinate things and keep him on schedule, maybe make arrangements where needed. Same goes for when he does do something, like his visit to Angola. Halo Trust organized it. Harry didn't need staff. So other than maybe an assistant here and there, Harry doesn't really appear to need any staff at all. Especially since he has Meredith now to handle the odd press question here and there. But let's be honest, the real reason for Meredith as a communications officer is to push things out to the media. It's not to be there to field questions. It's to put things out. People aren't clamoring to hear from Meghan or Harry about anything. Meg has people at Netflix doing most of the work, and therefore she wouldn't really need any of her own staff either. So any staff beyond Meredith, and perhaps maybe an assistant, feels very much for ego and otherwise unnecessary. They are there to keep up appearances, to make Harry and Meghan look important and busy, so much so that they thought that they needed at least a dozen people involved at any given moment. It's super silly, but for Harry, it must feel incredibly lonely to not have that many people around you all of the time. Since his whole life, he's used to having a lot of staff around. It must be weird for him to not even need that much staff these days. But shortly after news came out about this structure, that they were going to have this royal household set up, it was revealed what actually happened behind the scenes. They downsized their staff massively. They took the more practical and financially reasonable approach of hiring a firm to handle anything that should come up. And it would seem they are only keeping a very small group of people on in a more full-time and permanent capacity, like Meredith, for example, who is the go-between with the firm. Since mid-June, Harry and Meghan have parted ways with several key in-house communications staff, losing several deputies and directors amid what insiders describe as financial restructuring, which means that they do not have this dozen-strong staff at all, and maybe realized they couldn't afford it. They've brought in Method Communications, a US-based PR firm, to support their expanding roles across business, philanthropic, and media endeavors. Meredith Maines explained the move by saying that they are transitioning from a small internal team of 2, there was way more than 2 people involved, to an agency support staff of 8 operating across 5 time zones for a wider and quicker media outreach. And that staff of 8 at the agency are shared staff, meaning they have a whole group of clients and the Sussexes are just one of the clients. The revelation that it was financially motivated was peculiar to me because for some reason the Sussexes seemed to think that it looked better to say that this was a financial move, that it was about saving money, rather than not having a need for so many staff. I feel like that doesn't make sense. At least it doesn't to me. I feel like if they were going to explain the change at all, they should have just come from a place of trying to make it more streamlined, more convenient, less complicated, to take some of the micromanaging off of their plate and leave finances out of it, while casually sidestepping the fact that there just is not demand. There's a lack of demand for Harry and Meghan. They don't need a bunch of communications staff if people are not contacting them for interviews or asking questions or confirming stories. Like, they don't need communication staff. But let's be honest, if there was enough of a demand for commentary and interviews and confirming or denying this or that or the other thing from Harry and Meghan, if there was a demand for that, then it would justify the cost for the staff that they had. But there wasn't enough of a demand for contact with Harry and Meghan, so they couldn't justify that staff any longer. Additionally, they've had a notoriously high turnover. And so now they pretty much just deal with Meredith, and then she deals with the PR firm who represents tons of clients. There's been about 25 employees that departed from the Sussex's various teams since 2020, which is an embarrassingly high number, especially when you compare it to the royal family, who often stay for well over a decade or two, their staff does, because they're treated with respect and enjoy their working environment, obviously. For example, Catherine, Princess of Wales, her longtime personal assistant and informal sort of, or personal secretary, an informal sort of stylist, has departed after 15 years, is an amicable separation. She just wanted to move on to something else in her career. But she stayed for 15 years. Other people have stayed for like 20 years plus with the royals. They have kept staff members long term for a long time. They have great reputations as employers, you could say. But also, Harry and Meghan's Netflix deal, it has always been cited in media as a $100 million deal. But no such luck. In reality, their contract has now been revealed to be estimated more at $20 million. Still excessive for the value that Harry and Meghan bring, which is minimal. But the contract in reality was $20 million, and you could earn up to $100 million had they pumped out a lot more content and perhaps, key word here, successful content, almost like a commission-based structure where there's additional payments for programs that reach that 100 million hours viewed threshold or more. And with an estimated annual $2 million security bill, grossly excessive, and a $10 million mortgage, that Netflix deal is finally stretched thin enough to warrant getting rid of vanity staff. Which is what all these people really were. There was no need for this many communications people or PR people or branding people. Like, they didn't need any of these people. It was all for their ego to make them feel special. So at a certain point, you realize you don't need to hire people or pay people just to be around for no reason. The move to adopt an external agency is definitely a cost-effective shift away from maintaining a large permanent staff, but it's also kind of indicative of the bigger picture with what's going on with the Sussexes. A lack of demand for them in general. Like, this is a big sign that there just hasn't been stuff coming in, at least not anything that cannot be managed through Netflix's team or through, like, for example, Invictus itself. Like, Harry and Meghan as individuals do not need this much staff. And it just speaks to their delusions that they ever thought they did. Why? Why would you need that much staff? You are just private individuals now. So the bottom line is that they never built a full royal household with dozens of staffers on six-figure contracts. That just never happened. Instead, they cut down on their internal staff. Some layoffs, some resignations, and they pivoted to using an agency-managed PR model supported by Meredith Maines. This change was driven by a mix of financial pressures with decreased media earnings and rising personal costs, and a strategy to streamline their communications to some extent. They also have Method Communications sort of umbrella covering all their stuff, not just Meghan Harrold personally, but also Archewell, their Netflix projects, and As Ever to some extent. So it's kind of an all-in-one deal. Also, though, it's impossible to ignore the other motivations for this big shift, and parting ways with so many more staff members and aides dedicated exclusively to the Sussexes to a firm where they're clients. It's certainly a power shift, different dynamic here. But they've failed to maintain positive PR and haven't found a successful PR strategy since they left the royals. So perhaps someone has gotten through to Harry and Meghan that them trying to run things and tell their own staff what to do and coming up with their own PR strategies and hiring somebody to execute it isn't working well. because they're not PR experts. And hiring a firm that is full of PR experts and teams who do this for a living for many clients will get them a better result. So buckle up. There's about to be new nonsense from Harry and Meghan. But this also plays right into her demon boss reputation. While financial motivations dominate, reports also suggest that pressure from negative media coverage and reputational hits contributed to decisions to dismiss certain communications staff, including criticisms after Meghan's podcast, Netflix show, and media branding missteps. Tales of staff turnover fueled persistent rumors of a difficult workplace culture, particularly centered on Meghan's management style. Descriptions included abrasive, comparisons to mean girls, and staff mental health struggles in stressful environments. Some insiders claim previous hires were blamed for failing to counter negative press, or categorized the staffing shifts as reactive, targeting staff scapegoats rather than addressing a deeper strategic issue, blaming people who were on her team for the bad press that she was getting rather than understanding that she was bringing it on herself. So, was a big part of this huge firing of staff due to PR failures? The leaks about a terrible workplace, is that what prompted it? Or do you think it really is down to finances? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining me for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Have a happy day, everybody. Bye.